something I've heard when you were talking about GPT-3, I guess in the past years, is it's only doing some kind of interpolation, it's like memorizing everything.
I no longer believe, okay, so I have changed my position on that. So we did the big GPT-3 video when it came out, and I was convinced it was just bloviating. And also, our understanding of neural networks at the time was that they are just locality-sensitive hashing tables. I no longer think that, so I interviewed Randall Bellestrio, you know, one of Jan's postdocs yesterday, and he's now convinced me that neural networks are far more extrapolative, even MLPs, not, you know, without the inductive priors, far more extrapolative than I thought. And also, I never actually believed at the beginning with the first Da Vinci model that it was extrapolating. I really thought it was a parlor trick. I've now, with Da Vinci 2, seen, and also with all of the chain of thought prompting, the you know, the scratch pad and the work from Hattie-Zoe, you know, on algorithmic reasoning just now, it really is doing something that is quite extrapolative, which I find remarkable, given that it's trained for doing a particular task that you get this emergent side intelligence. So, you know, I feel like I've kind of shifted ground a little bit since then.
I think one point of disagreement we have, and you've also mentioned it with Connor, is that there's something called instrumental convergence.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you agree with that about instrumental convergence? Or?
Instrumental convergence, I think, is plausible. Although, like, the thing that makes me like cringe a little bit is it relies on this conception of intelligence as being like the sole pursuit of doing one thing. You know, it seems like an oxymoron that the intelligence that is filling up the cauldron would develop this emergent super intelligence, but it wouldn't be smart enough to realize, why am I filling up a cauldron and why can't I just like change my programming or whatever. So there's that, but there's also this really interesting thing that you're talking about. And first of all, like, I'm refreshed that a lot of you folks are talking about augmented intelligence with humans rather than like a monolithic superintelligence, which is like what I normally argue against. But then it brings me to this point. Have you ever heard of the myth of the 10x developer?
Yeah,
so that's a great example of this.
Are you a 10x developer?
No, and maybe this might kind of like tease apart the issue. Do you believe in the concept of a 10x developer?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said yes. I don't, and the reason I don't, and it's the same thing you were talking about, augmented developers using Copilot, using tooling and so on, making the whole process more efficient. The thing is, there are bottlenecks everywhere, right? You know, it takes ages to get code checked in. We've got a code review process which like introduces bottlenecks. There's complexity everywhere, and generally, like, systems are just all of these complex trade-offs, and if you make one part more efficient, you kind of like move the pain to another part of the system. And that's just my experience using complex systems. So yeah, in short, I don't think it's really possible to just get that much uplift. I think there are scaling laws which always limit you from improving your efficiency in all domains.
We haven't really seen diminishing returns from scaling laws yet, like true diminishing returns. Like it doesn't temper it off. It doesn't temper it off all the way, right? It's still...
That's true, but I think that's different. So that is a monolithic language model, which is just, but you're talking about perplexity, you know, which is the ability to like predict a load of tokens on the internet. There is no bottleneck there. The bottleneck comes when you start, interacting with other systems. So when I start using my language model to do my coding for me, and when I need to do this and I need to do that, I send a message to that person. I guess maybe it'd be more salient to take a step back and just think, let's go back to monolithic. Do you think just with the monolithic language model, there's a risk of superintelligence?
With a monolithic language model, there's a risk of superintelligence? No. I guess because the language model only reasons through one step, right? It just wants to maximize the likelihood of the next token or something. But if we have something that can like plan and have some like goal over the long term, let's say, I don't know, something doing a route, those kind of more long-term planning, then it might, want to optimize some of reward over time. And so yes, one language model is not a problem, but I would argue that like even a very, very strong language model, if it's very useful, might enable humans to build better AI much faster. So imagine you're Sam Altman and you have access to GPT-5 and you can ask it like, what's the best strategy for running my company? What's the best, like, how do I do this? If it enables humans to be like 20% faster at the job, then it accelerates timelines towards building general AI faster. So
so that's really interesting. So that's this idea of recursive self-improvement.
Yes.
And I mean, that was kind of popularized by Schmidhuber with his Gödel machines and all the rest of it. Actually, I think it was a guy called Good in the 1966 had the original idea. But even with that, I still feel that it's an asymptote. So a system will become slightly more and more efficient, and then it will just kind of like level out and bottleneck.
We haven't seen any So two things. One is we haven't seen any evidence of it leveling out, and second thing is, even if it levels out, if it's after human level, then it's still better than us, and it can still, if you have one Team Scarfe, that is like 10 times faster than Team Scarfe because it's a computer.
Oh, but just to be clear, so we're talking about two things. So one thing is the monolithic language model. I agree with you, the perplexity is going up, and right now it looks almost linear with the amount of compute and data. It's insane, right? But in order for that, because you're worried about the effect this might have on civilization, and the language model, it doesn't have any agency, it doesn't have any intentionality, it only does what we tell it to do. You know, it can't like tell us to. So it's only through us that it can really be any harm at all, right? And that's where the bottleneck is.
There are other models. So recently, I think Adapted.ai released an alpha for their model Action Transformer, where they're actually deploying stuff on the internet that they can like actually act in the real world and get feedback from what they're doing. And we're generally taking those like advances in language models and applying them to the children transformers and stuff that can actually act in the real world. And like even like this new ChatGPT can as an option for like browsing and can like actually do requests possibly. So yeah, I think there's like so many advantages to having those things interact with the real world and like learn online that is very hard for them to be just like black boxes that can just like oracle AIs and.
Yeah, so on that, you're absolutely right. So the problem with language models at the moment is they don't do information retrieval, which means like they don't know about what the weather is today or what the news is. So people are already extending them to do information retrieval. You know, it's with like in context information retrieval. So if the model was kind of like intelligent and trying to hide its super intelligence from us, it could already via injection attack, you know, talk to the internet and get the message out there and so on. But that to me it just seems implausible.
There are so many companies doing AI and like now they're more and more trying to scale those models up, and I don't know, we're only in 2022, right? So do you agree that like at some point in the next 20 years this might be a problem?
No.
At some point in this century?
Well, no, so the thing is, I think the problem at the moment is, you know, with hill climbing, you can only like, you can't see over the hill that you're climbing up. So for all we know, we're about to hit a wall. I know Gary Marcus jokes about we're going to hit a wall.
Do you agree with him?
I think that the horizon is further away than he thinks it is, but we inevitably will hit a wall, in my opinion. And so I don't want to come across as cynical.
Why are you so confident when you say like inevitably?
Well, part of it is driven by, as I say, computers don't have intentionality. Like it's only in tandem with humans that they do any of this stuff. And I think when you start interfacing with humans, bottlenecks occur. But I don't want to come across as someone really skeptical, because I think language models and the AI that we have today will transform the world, and people don't even know it yet. It will transform the world in many, many ways.
How?
Well, I mean, it's
in which way can AI be like so transformative and still be so far from what humans do?
Well, I mean, I like the example of DALL-E and the generative AI models, because I think that's a more intelligible way of understanding what the AI is. It's something which, it's actually a bit of a parlor trick. Like when you use it interactively, it seems magical, and it's easy to be fooled by randomness, but unless we're driving it and working with it, I don't think it has the potential to do any harm. Maybe we should like take the conversation to something like Galactica. Right, so
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure if I know exactly what the model does.
Okay, it's a generative model for doing scientific paper generation, and Facebook took it down because Gary said it produced misinformation and it was harmful. And do you think that was harmful?
Yeah, I haven't seen this paper, so.
Okay, but that's a great example of this kind of.
Is generating papers harmful? Is that the question?
Well, the argument is that it generates very authentic-looking academic material, and the people that generate the material might not know that it's misinformation, and then they might like propagate it.
So is the question like, is it bad for like some technologies to have dual use and be used for bad things?
Well, I guess like that's just a really good example of, we're talking about reality plus and transhumanism, and like we're going to evolve with these AI models, and it's going to be like a new form of experiencing the world for us. But I think it will lead somewhere interesting, but I don't think it will cause this recursive self-improvement. Right,
so I guess the main disagreement or crux is that I think you see something like where humans and AI co-evolve and somehow manage to like still do things like AI research or code or like very high abstract work, and maybe like do like new jobs, or is it basically what you think, or?
Well, maybe like a good analogy is market efficiency. So, you know, like we live in a world now where with things like Uber and Facebook or whatever, we've got very efficient markets. And actually they've reached a kind of bottom. You know, you get this kind of, even like on exchanges, you get this bid-ask spread and you get this equilibria that develops. Now, what's happening with AI augmented human experience is we haven't yet reached the equilibria because we haven't yet reached the bottleneck. But I think that will happen.
Right, so I guess I disagree about we're going to reach a bottleneck, or that the bottleneck will be before we get self-improving AI. I guess two things, and yeah, and I also think that you know, like we can easily automate human jobs like coding AIs or doing AI research, and we're like not that special. So that we always see like a Copilot is able to like help us code, help us debug, help us do a lot of things. And like humans are not that special. Like it's not so hard to code.
Well, I disagree with that. So I think the magic of human cognition is our intentionality and creativity. I don't.
There's no magic in human cognition. It's just a giant neural network in your brain, right?
I don't agree. Well, as Searle would argue against that. So Searle famously argued that, you know, it's a biological property, that, you know, consciousness is.
Do you agree with that consciousness and intelligence is a biological?
I try to be agnostic. I think it's. I mean, I spoke to Chalmers yesterday. It's impossible to argue against it. So there is actually a very reasonable argument that you know, in silico you can't have intentionality and creativity. Chomsky said that, again, creativity and free will is something that is beyond our cognitive horizon. Why we do something which is appropriate to the situation but not caused by it. Chomsky says it's an absolute mystery, right? So what's happening with these, let's say, Codex and Copilot, is it's taking away a lot of the mundane things that we do, right? Which means that we can like flourish and we can focus our attention on more enriching endeavors. But these things, without a human with agency driving these things, they're nothing.
I disagree. Like if you have those like action transformers on the internet doing actual actions and learning online, they don't need any humans to do anything. They can just like do whatever they want.
Yeah, but they only do what they've been told.
They learn new things. They learn new strategies.
They do, but what's a good example of this? Like, you know, if I create a reinforcement learning agent robot to kind of go and hoover the carpet and so on, like, if you trace it all the way back, like, where did it start? We told it what to do. It all started from us.
How did Team Scarfe start? You learned stuff from the environment, you were born and people told you stuff to do, and now you're doing this and you're interviewing me here. Like, it's not so different. We're just like learning things on the world, building world models and optimizing some genetic fitness and other things, right? But
yeah,
I don't think it's very hard for AIs to code. And the thing about like free will, I think we need to remove everything like consciousness, free will, all those kind of philosophical concepts. They're like ill-defined. If an AI is able to, you know, overpower humanity and, you know, do stuff better than humans, we don't really care if it has free will, consciousness, or everything. If it's able to do stuff better than us and achieve its goals better than us and faster than us, yeah, that's what matters at the end of the day.
Exactly, and I don't want to go philosophical, but instead of ill-defined, I prefer misunderstood. And you may be entirely right that they are not a necessary condition. It's impossible, really. That's the problem when you talk about this stuff. It's impossible to argue against it. You might be right, so but I suspect that it is a necessary condition.
But it's not scientific if you're going to like prove if the system is conscious or not.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, look at Chalmers' talk. Like, all we can do is come up with a reasoning framework. He uses functionalism to decide whether or not a machine, based on its behavior, has consciousness. That's all we can do. Like, no one knows.
And to be fair, I think it will matter at the end if AIs end up being conscious or not, because then society will decide how to incorporate them into society and how to deal with them. So it will have actual repercussions on like how do we treat them. Mm-hmm. So I think there are some consequences. I just don't think it's a consequence on like how they will act and be general and be a danger for humanity. Did you learn anything from talking to Connor on your podcast? Did he update you in any way on?
I definitely learned a lot because we always do a lot of research when we do these things. So at the time, I went and read up about everything, and when we're editing the show, you know, obviously I'm experiencing it again, but you know, the second time. Yeah, I learned a lot because I didn't know anything about the whole rationalist movement, about Eliezer, about the sequences, about AIXI, about this whole view of consequentialism and like the economic stuff. It was all completely new to me. I had no idea about any of it. So yeah, Connor gave all of that to me. Actually, it sparked a morbid interest. I was just saying to your friend Alan that I just read a book called The Rationalist Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know whether you've read that, but it's all about the rationalist movement.
Yeah, I haven't yet.
And there's like a lot of, and again, I don't want to make a bad job of explaining this because it's just a book, but there's like some overlap with the transhumanist community and the long-termist folks and the effective altruism folks.
I think you're in front of the camera, but.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry, guys.
And this is a whole world that I knew absolutely nothing about, and I'm very intrigued by it. Yeah.
What do you think of the alignment movement? Of people doing AI alignment research? Do you think it's important, neglected, just a distraction?
Sorry, we're filming. Sorry about that. Sorry. No problem at all. No problem. What do I think of the alignment movement? Well,
of alignment research in general.
So some of it, from my, and I just want to be as honest as I possibly can. Some of it seems a little bit crazy to me. For example, like research into. I mean, when GPT-3 came out, Connor said on our show that he thinks it's intelligence, it's AGI.
So this was for the memes. They said it was for the memes.
Oh,
he said before it was for the memes.
I know he updated his position, but there is a very serious view, for example, that these systems are already super intelligent and they're just hiding the fact from us. And we need to do interpretability because they might be hiding their superintelligence because they might be trying to take over the world. I mean, that to me sounds a little bit like science fiction.
So again, there's the point about large language models being more capable than we think, and we just need to prompt them in the right way, right? Mm-hmm. And so we really don't know what they're capable of doing until we're prompting them the right way to get this knowledge from them. And the thing about deception is if systems are smart enough, they might be motivated to dissimulate their smartness to avoid, being turned off or those kind of things.
Yeah.
But I think Connor will agree that we don't have any systems that can deceive humans at the moment.
Okay, but isn't the irony that the real deception is like us seeing, like patterns in randomness, which is to say, like, when I agree with you that when we craft the correct prompt, we get remarkable things coming out of GPT-3, but that came from us, and that prompt will, depending on how the language model is fine-tuned, produce the same class of outputs.
It will produce the same class of outputs.
So I guess I'm saying, like, is it really intelligence if because the whole thing with this in-context learning, it's fascinating, is that the prompt is becoming like a kind of computer program interpreter, right? So now, and I'm excited that it's a new form of software development and engineering, but all we're doing is like we're moving the domain. Right, so now I'm writing software in the prompt, I'm not writing it with code. Like, software
are now easier and easier to prompt well, and like with InstructGPT, models understand better the instructions, they do better what we want them to do.
They do, but I'm not sure if you saw that article from Connor's group about how it brittlizes the outputs. So if you look at the histogram of distributions over all of the possible trajectories, it makes it much more likely that you'll get the same output, which in my opinion is like more towards it being brittle.
It will produce the same output?
Yes, so this reinforcement learning for human feedback,
right.
Like the instruct type
stuff.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, so it brittlizes the output, which means that, and again, this is the fooled by randomness thing, because now when I use it, there's an invisible boundary of perception that gets crossed. It always gives me exactly what I want.
Right.
It's been kind of robustified in deceiving me, but it's become brittlized in being artificial general intelligence.
Right, so it's been like trained to speak like a human or say whatever the humans want and go in this direction. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that error from human feedback is not perfect and doesn't really give the models what we want, and like it's like kind of pushed in some direction. But the ChatGPT thing that was released yesterday, it was incredible at actually requiring like very little prompt engineering. So I think we're moving in a direction where we actually don't need to be prompt engineers. We just need to like speak in natural language and the models understand us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you speak enough. I don't know how much you've played with it since yesterday. You think I've been busy, but the thing is, like, requires little prompt engineering. I think we're moving in the direction where just a few sentences in natural language is enough.
That I agree with you. So I thought at the beginning, cynically, that we would have to develop almost a language of our own in order to prompt these things, and only expert prompt engineers would understand. And what I've seen with the development of the models is that you can...
Sure,
yeah, sorry, we're filming.
Camera,
sorry.
But, like, you take a picture of this.
What, yeah.
You can take a picture, yeah.
What I've noticed is that... Which way, please, guys?
The joy of the real life.
Yeah. What I've noticed is that now the models have become so good that they know pretty much exactly what you mean. You can use completely natural language to explain what you want to do, and my fears have been completely allayed that we would need to have some esoteric magical language to prompt the models.
Right, so imagine we're in Team Scarfe's world, OpenAI continues to exist, and we have better and better language models. So let's say we have GPT-4 in a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens until we get to, I don't know, your death, maybe like in 60 years or whatever?
Yeah.
Do we get to GPT-24 and it's still like pretty good at talking? What's the actual timeline until what do you expect to see before you die?
Well, I mean, you can answer it in many ways. So with the current architecture, there are very real computational limitations. So a language model is a finite state automata. I mean, all neural networks are finite state automatas, apart from RNNs, which are one level up the Chomsky hierarchy, which means they're bounded, they're not memory augmented, they can't compute the nth digit of pi, for example. There are very, very real computational limitations.
They can't compute the
for example,
integer of pi?
So no neural network, it doesn't matter how big GPT-X is, it will never compute the nth digit of pi. That is just a computational fact. So it's limited, but this is
even if we have memory.
That's different. If it was memory augmented, then it's a different level in the Chomsky hierarchy.
Right.
But this is why symbolists say that neural networks are not Turing machines, because Turing machines, of course, have an infinite tape. They can represent infinite objects. Neural networks cannot do that. Okay,
controversial claim. We don't really care about the, I don't know, 500 digits of pi, and a model that cannot compute any digits of pi might still be able to kill Team Scarfe.
Well, I know, but even natural language understanding, the cardinality of language is infinite. It's infinite. Infinite.
Well, humans are able to talk, right?
Yeah, we are, but that's because we have symbolic quantification over variables, as Gary Marcus would say, using compositionality.
Do you think Gary Marcus has been shown to be right with all his takes on compositionality in images over the past year with, I don't know, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E 2?
So I have been a huge Gary Marcus supporter, especially around the compositionality stuff. So I mean, a lot of that comes from his background in psychology, because they focus on the mind, you know, like Fodor and Polishin released that connectionism critique paper in 1988, where they spoke about productivity and systematicity, productivity being the infinite cardinality of language, and systematicity being this compositionality idea, or the embryonic form of it. So all of that, I think, is very, very good. I disagree with Gary on some of his recent takes on misinformation. So,
yeah, I haven't seen those things. So would you call yourself a symbolicist, or?
I mean, I feel like I'm just a passive observer in this game, but I think the argument is indisputable. So yes.
Indisputable.
Yeah. If you want to build a system that can represent infinite objects, and I believe that, you know, we're talking about free will and creativity, even analogy making and abstraction, it's the ability to select from an infinite set of possible mappings. You need to have a representation that supports infinity. So you need symbols.
Would you say that Stable Diffusion outputs are creative in some sense? The model generating outputs?
They're creative because the humans that drove them are creative.
So they're not creative by themselves?
No, of course not. That's the whole point.
Did anything impress you this year?
Yes, but again, like this is what Chomsky said, you know, like the bulldozers are really good at moving the snow out of the way, and he loves using live captions because it helps him understand better, but it's engineering, it's not a contribution to science. You know, he thinks we've given up on science.
So isn't AlphaFold a contribution to science, helping a bunch of scientists, you know, find the structure of proteins faster?
Look, AlphaFold is amazing. It's amazing, but it's an engineering achievement. Like they've taken a very simple architecture and scaled it up. And
so what makes it a scientific contribution is how complex the architecture is?
No, I don't want to be. Look, it's revolutionary. I really think that's revolutionary, but I don't think those folks have built this amazing thing, but they don't really understand how it works at the macroscopic scale. They've built all of these like very clever, geometrically inspired inductive priors in there, and they have some idea about how it's all working and so on. They don't really understand how it works macroscopically.
Could we get something that is smarter than humans without actually understanding how it works? Like, do we need to understand neural networks to have them have a transformative impact on our economy?
No, we don't. No, I mean, cynically, I think most of the things in the world, even motion, which was the original hard problem before consciousness, as Chomsky said, we don't understand anything. It's just beyond our cognition.
Do you think the human brain is something magic that we'll never be able to replicate?
That's a difficult question.
This is yes.
Because first of all, like, am I a computationalist? And I'm even drawn on that, to be honest. But assuming I am a computationalist, then yeah, I guess so. But you know, would it be a philosophical zombie, as Chalmers said? Probably. Anyway, dude.
I think I've reached a point where.
This is amazing.
Will you be able to send me? So, it would be great to have you on my channel, but would you be able to send me the video? And
yeah, of course, man. Yeah. I mean, you can just put it on your channel.